We preview the Chicago Bears wide receiver position next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What's going on, everybody? It has been a while, and for those that are familiar with the show, yes, that I had a baby. I had my 4th child, so that happened last week. So it took a little bit of time to be with the baby. Had to get things all squared away at work as well. So thank you for the little bit of time off. The baby is healthy, a 10-pound, 5-ounce baby too. So a very, very large, maybe a future offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears. We'll have to see. We'll have to see about that. But overall, thank you all so much for the time. But today we are going to be breaking down the wide receivers and talking a little bit more about kick off our countdown to camp, our position profiles. I always kind of have those multiple names out there for what we're going to break down, because what we talk about is first, just each individual position group. So with the wide receivers, we'll talk about what has changed, the additions, the subtractions. We'll talk about some of the key players that are out there for this position, but then also break down some over-unders that I set just for fun, just to see where we kind of think this position group is going to be set at. But then also at the very end, we're going to talk about, last but not least, did we get better at the position? So let's get right into it, and let's flip over to our roster changes, where I'll tell you this, with the roster kind of flipping around a little bit, our biggest departure from all of this was the one and only Keenan Allen. So Keenan Allen was the big departure that we had from this team, and the big reason was because, it just doesn't feel like we want him to be on this team anymore. He was our big subtraction, but besides that, DeAndre Carter, Bayless Jones, I know that he was cut beforehand, but I kind of like looking at exactly what we had at this time last season, but also Dante Pettis. Yet again, some were released at different times, but these are our quote-unquote departures. And if you look even deeper, you kind of see who the Bears all got rid of. So for those that are looking at the actual graphic, everyone with red text is someone that we have gotten rid of. So when you look at the Bears wide receivers depth chart from last season, you really do see it tells it that, hey, the Bears were not happy at the wide receiver position, especially at the depth spot. So obviously, Keenan Allen, I believe, still unsigned at this current point, but no DeAndre Carter, no Bayless Jones, who are our backups at wide receiver, Dante Pettis, Simba Webster, Colin Johnson, Freddie Swain, and Peter LeBlanc, all gone. And the only people from this existing one that stayed on was Romar Morris, DJ Moore, Tyler Scott, and John Jackson. Now, when we previewed the team last year, kind of highlighted that, hey, the starters are there. You have the starting 3, but the backups was still something that I was nervous about because Tyler Scott was unproven. You were putting so much on Tyler Scott, and then Bayless not going to be a wide receiver. You had Dante Pettis step in, right? It did not feel good with the backups that you had at this wide receiver position. And that's really what we saw. And we'll talk about this a little bit later when we break down if we got better or if we got worse. But next, let's talk about the new depth chart that we have for wide receivers. So right now, DJ Moore, Luther Burton, as the starter. Might be Zakias, but also we'll talk about that later, and also Romar Morris. So Luther Burton, DJ Moore, Romar Morris as the starting lineup, but then the backups, the projected backups right now are Tyler Scott, Olamide Zakias, and Devin Duvernay. Yet again, Olamide Zakias might actually be the starter over Luther Burton. We'll break down kind of what's going on with Luther Burton next about the contract stuff, injuries, other things like that. But then the third string, we have Miles Boykin, we have Maurice Alexander, and Samori Toure. And then the fourth stringers, the undrafted players, we still have John Jackson, a.k.a. Caleb Williams' best friend. And then we also have J.P. Richardson and Jade Walker. We'll talk a little bit about J.P. Richardson a little bit later on because he's at least someone to look out for. Not saying he's going to make the team or anything like that, but I think he might be able to push for a practice squad spot, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So that's the current state of the wide receiver position. But now let's break down a little bit of the actual position groups, about the actual players. And to start things off, let's break down DJ Moore. So last season, 98 receptions on 137 targets. Now, when you look at this too, he was 9th in the NFL in receptions, 9th in targets, but 26 in receiving yards with 966. Now, a big reason for those that like us, that we all watch the games, a big reason is DJ Moore got a lot of screen passes. They were purposely trying to feed him the ball just to get the ball inside of his hands. So, yeah, he got a lot of touches, but maybe not the touches that he necessarily wanted. And also another piece too is when we look at his performance last season, it wasn't as good as when he had Justin Fields at quarterback. Also, you could visibly see his frustration. So I know the number one thing a lot of us are talking about and looking at is how is DJ Moore going to take to this new coaching, to this being held accountable? Now, as someone in my own position, not my current job, but in a previous job, we had bad leadership at one point. And when we had bad leadership, everyone's like, all right, it's the leadership. This is the group that needs to leave. And then when they're gone, now it's put up or shut up. You can't complain about leadership. You can't complain about other things going on. You just have to do the work. Now you have to do it. Otherwise, some people just want to complain for the sake of complaining. So with DJ Moore, hopefully it seems like everything will be there. And also in his previous experience with the Panthers, there's nothing out there that should say that he would be a problem by any sort of the imagination. So still fingers crossed, but man, it sounds like everything that we're hearing, that him and Caleb Williams are starting to get some of that better chemistry. I think the thing that I would love to see more is just Caleb. It's more from the Caleb side, but Caleb's deep ball has not looked great. But to me, try to improve that chemistry with DJ Moore. Like, he's a very talented player. And I know that he's a veteran. He's up there. I think he's 28 years old now. So getting a little older, but still very good wide receiver. Good number one to have out there. So now let's go over to another person who some people are hoping he can kind of evolve into a number one wide receiver. And that is Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze last season, 54 receptions, which was good for the 47th most receptions out of any wide receiver, and also 734 receiving yards, which was good for 41st. And I don't have the exact stat, but I think per reception, it's around like 13 yards per reception. He's got one of the farthest average depths of target. So what that means too is that when he was being when people were trying to throw it to him, it was further downfield. It was for larger chunks of plays. Like as I previously discussed with DJ Moore, the deep ball just didn't seem to be there with Caleb Williams last season. So to me, with Rome Odunze, the big question is, can he take that next step? Now, here's the thing. With Rome Odunze, when we're watching the tape, he was getting open. He looked good. And I think overall with Rome, it was never a question of, is he actually going to be a wide receiver in the NFL? He's very athletic. He can catch. He can run good routes, right? It was just, what is his ceiling? And I think with this year, just hopefully they can build that chemistry. He's someone who's a very reliable receiver. Like I was saying before, he can get open. He has some pretty good route running. He's a good route runner. Now, after the catch, I still have never seen him really do too much after the catch. He's more of a athlete that can jump ball, catch it, but also get open. So to me, the big thing is that deep ball. Can they get that going? Because I think if they can get that on point, you're going to see more receptions to Rome Odunze. You're going to see more catches by him. He's a true outside receiver too, which is really nice because we have DJ Moore who can be somewhat of a slot. Same thing with Luther Burton as well. So to me, Rome, can he take that next step? And I think he can. I think he could definitely, it's going to be exciting. Do I think all of a sudden he's going to pop for 1,200 yards? No. Is he all of a sudden going to be one of the best receivers? No, but I think that he can probably start flirting with that 1,000 yard mark, which we might be talking a little bit more about with our over-unders. So we've gone through the main two, but now Luther Burton. Let's talk about this guy because this is the headline that everyone's kind of talking about with Luther. Like, is Luther Burton this? Why is he not at training camp? Is it his injury? Now, we have broken down Luther Burton a whole lot. We've watched, 7 games on the channel. I don't know if that video is still up or if YouTube actually took it down. But we broke down so much Luther Burton tape and just what we're getting out of a player like him. Now, last year, he had a down year, as we know, 676 receiving yards, which was not the same as he had the season before, which was 1,209. He is, in fact, a true junior, and he is someone who reminds me a lot of DJ Moore, with a little bit of the attitude and also just the big playability, and him also just being a good receiver. And just like DJ Moore is not a route technician. He is not someone who just absolutely smokes people on his routes, but he's someone that has good enough route running. In Luther Burton's sophomore season, he actually wasn't a great route runner, but you saw the progression in his junior season. So with this, you're kind of hoping that, hey, maybe we can get Antoine Randall to coach him up and just kind of continue that progression. He has all the talent in the world, and the biggest thing is when the ball is in his hands. Now, with all the other players we talked about, DJ Moore, when the ball's in his hands, still very good. Rome, like I said, not good when the ball is in his hands compared to other NFL wide receivers. Luther Burton, just feed him the rock. He's going to do something very, very special. So that's the thing that I really like about Luther. But now, why is he not playing? Now, he tweaked his hamstring, and I've seen different things where hamstring, you kind of want to, you want them to come back. He should kind of be back already. He should have maybe at least participated in a mini camp drill. Now the questions of how severe his actual injury is are still up in the air. But the big headline that people are talking about is the second round rookies. Because if you look at the second round rookies, there are a total of 37 rookies as of right now that I'm recording this that are currently unsigned. 30 of those are second round draft picks. You heard that right. Out of the 32 second round draft picks that were drafted in April, we're all the way out in mid-June. Only 2 of them have been signed, and that's Higgins and Schlesinger. Now, I believe that there were both number 1 pick and number 2 pick in the second round. Both had fully guaranteed second round deals. And that seemingly is the thing that is causing this big holdup. Because now, first round picks, you're basically fully guaranteed. It's pretty much guaranteed. You got that all there. But now with these second round draft picks, they're seeing, wait a second, I can get this deal fully guaranteed. So you better believe like Luther Burton and, Ozzie Trapillo, another person who's not unsigned, who hasn't been signed. Shamar Turner from the Bears. All 3 second round picks are unsigned. And so a lot of people, a lot of experts are pointing to the fact that the first 2 picks got fully guaranteed second round contracts. So to me, with the injury and everything else, and it seemingly too that Ben Johnson seemed a little frustrated, part of me goes, hey, everybody's saying you should probably be back unless it's a very severe injury and your head coach looks a little frustrated with this. Is this part of it, right? It just throwing that out there. Is this part of it? So something to definitely be on the lookout for is when will these other second round draft picks start to get signed? Because also with Luther Burton, he was the 7th. He was the 7th second round pick. So top 10 in the second round. So you better believe that he's probably like, hey, maybe that's why he's a little more cautious about his injury than, say, an Ozzie Trapillo or a Turner. Now, do I agree with him? I personally don't. It's just because I fully agree that you should have as much guaranteed and you're entitled to your money. But this is something that I think is, especially since it was the first time that 2 second round draft picks got fully guaranteed money. I don't know. I think it's it's a lot, so that's something that I don't necessarily love. And yeah, it's a quad injury overall. So just missing a lot more time than kind of expected. So yeah, just a lot of rumors spurring out there, just popping up about Burton being disappointed. But besides all that stuff, he's just going to be a playmaker for you. It's something that I see his role immediately. I could see DJ trying to be more of that Amon-Ra St. Brown and Luther Burton being more, I don't want to call him just a gadget guy, but being a number 3 wide receiver that you're putting in position to create after the catch because he's just that dynamic. He's a very special player. Now, hope to see him out there inside of actual training camp. So now, let's keep on moving about some of the backups. So we have a lot of backups to cover. Like I was saying, Luther Burton might get replaced by this one individual, and that being Olamide Zakias. Now, Olamide Zakias is already getting a lot of people excited over inside of the OTAs and minicamp that just took place. A lot of people saying, hey, this guy can play, right? And also, too, he's going to be 28 years old. He is a solid veteran, played with the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years, then went over to Philly, then went over to Washington, and is now over with the Chicago Bears. Now, he's just been a good receiver everywhere he's gone. I have the PFF grades up for anyone that's watching out there on YouTube, but you look at it last season, 69.2 overall grade last season with over 500 receiving yards. He only had over 100 receiving yards in Philly, but before that, like in Atlanta, over 500 yards in 2022 with Atlanta and over 400 yards in 2021. Now, is he this phenomenal receiver that's going to be your number 1? No. But like we were talking about with the depth that we had at wide receiver, we just simply did not have depth. And the fact that you drafted Luther Burton as that number 3 wide receiver, and you have Olamide Zakias as your number 3 wide receiver, that's pretty darn good. Because then we'll go through even more depth. But I really like what Zakias brings to the table. Someone that can play very, very dominantly out of the slot. But if you look at his target shares or where he's kind of lined up, 54% in the slot last season, but still can play that outside role as well. But everyone's kind of talking that he did play a little bit more in the slot during minicamp and OTAs. Him being 5'8", 193 does kind of make a little bit of sense with that as well. So that's the key backup that I wanted to talk about because, like I said, already looks pretty good in training camp or OTAs in minicamp, and already someone that is turning a lot of heads as how good and how quick he actually is. But next, speaking of quickness and just overall turning of heads, JP Richardson, the undrafted rookie free agent out of TCU. Now, he played 2 years of ball at Oklahoma State, where in his sophomore season, he had 508 receiving yards, but then transferred over to TCU, where he had over 500 yards in 2023 and over 700 receiving yards in 2024. Now, TCU was loaded at wide receiver with Besh and also the wide receiver that got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, who, yet again, more of a playmaker. JP Richardson, 6 foot, 195, so quick. He's very quick, very agile, very speedy. And that's the reason why he was turning a lot of heads. So to me, there's definitely a type that Ben Johnson wants at receiver. And it seems like JP Richardson is going to be someone that you're going to hear me talk about more when it comes down to training camp, but also you're going to hear me talk about him more when it comes down to the preseason games. Because, yeah, I think that this is a pretty good group of receivers when you look at the top 6 with Scott, Zakias, Duvernay as some of the backups. But you also have Miles Boykin, which we'll talk about as well, or maybe Boykin kicks out Tyler Scott, but JP Richardson, maybe he's someone that sneaks onto the practice squad with him being that Ben Johnson type of receiver. But now, let's go to the other veteran, who is Devin Duvernay, 5'11", 202, out of my Texas Longhorns. But Devin Duvernay is someone that I've always really liked. Go figure. I'm a Texas Longhorn fan, and I really like Duvernay. I've always liked him because of the pure speed. Now, last season, only 79 receiving yards out of Jacksonville. But hey, don't let that deter you. Back in 2022, over 400 yards for Baltimore, and then over 200 yards in his rookie season and sophomore seasons, but was banged up in 2023. Now, yet again, do I think that he's going to come out here and all of a sudden be wide receiver 3? No, but do I think that Devin Duvernay is an improvement over Dante Pettis? Yes. Do I think he's an improvement over Velus Jones at wide receiver? Yes. Over DeAndre Carter? Yeah, I'd say so, because I think Carter has always been more of a return man than necessarily a wide receiver. But still, I think that they're kind of a similar player. And that's where I like him as your number 6 wide receiver being Devin Duvernay. Don't mind that at all. And yet again, around 6 foot, around 200 pounds, speedy, fast playmaker. Ben Johnson has a type. It definitely has a type. So speaking of that, we have to talk about the person that might get cut. And this is Tyler Scott going into his 3rd season. The former 4th round draft pick out of Cincinnati. Now, this is someone I know I had very high hopes for. And even now, I still like the draft pick. Now, obviously, hindsight is 2020. And I still go back to, you can grade a draft and then you can grade how it happens and what ended up happening afterwards. Scott, coming out of Cincinnati, was a former running back, believe it or not, at 185 pounds and 5'10". And he was someone that was shifty with the ball in his hands and was really a straight line, deep ball guy. Now with Caleb Williams, like we've said, one of his biggest weaknesses is that deep ball. Now with Tyler Scott, obviously that's not great for him. But also too with Tyler Scott, something as well as he's good after the catch, or very solid after the catch. But what's kind of holding him back is that former former running back type of background, where he seems to body catch a lot. Even whenever I'm out there in training camp, he just doesn't seem to get it, so to speak. Like, he just doesn't seem like a wide receiver as he's playing, or like the catching, it just never seems natural. He's more of a runner than an actual route runner. So I want to see, is there any sort of progression, new coaching staff, new system? I'm hoping for the best, right? This is someone that I've really liked. I've heard people that have met Tyler Scott really just like this guy too. So easy to root for. But he's definitely on the chopping block. Not drafted by the Ben Johnson regime, even though it was the Ryan Poles regime. But he seems like he at least should have a role. It's just a matter of, do they like other players more than Tyler Scott? So I'm curious. For those out there on YouTube, do you think he's actually going to get cut? Because to me, I have a sneaky suspicion. Like, it does feel that way, especially when we talk about our next player too. When we talk about Miles Boykin, yet again, not someone who's an absolute beast of a player. 6'4", 220, so larger, former Notre Dame Fighting Irish 3rd round pick. For Baltimore, had around 200 yards his first 2 seasons. But because of injuries, just really has not seen the field too much. But when healthy, he's speedy, he's quick, he's a good 5th wide receiver, good 6th wide receiver. And I think it's going to be really coming down to Miles Boykin or Tyler Scott duking it out in special teams, right? Who can be the best high tower contributor rather than them being an actual wide receiver? Because yet again, your 1 through 4 wide receivers, those will be your actual wide receivers, while 5 and 6, those are then, hey, I'll come in a pinch, but also I'll be mainly a special teams type of an asset. But overall, like I said, Miles Boykin, I like him. It's just, as a 5th wide receiver, 6th wide receiver, don't mind that at all. Just adds a little bit more competition, a little bit more like familiar competition to your wide receiver spot. Now, before we go into the over-unders, I do want to talk about this unit because of the game-breaking ability that Luther Burton, Zakias, Duvernay all have. All of these are also going to be duking it out at the kick return and punt return spots. Now, I know some people do not want Luther Burton returning punts, do not want him returning kicks. I say, why not? I would love to see him get a lot of snaps, get a lot of touches, and as far as I know, right, unless Luther Burton is absolutely lighting up training camp as a wide receiver, and people are like, holy crap, this guy is elite. This would be amazing. If he is that good, then yeah, I would not play him at punt return, keep him as a wide receiver. But overall, like, I expect him to be good, but I don't expect him to be insane. But like I said, the big thing with Luther Burton to me is his playmaking ability. This guy is a playmaker. This guy is just great at that can run a good route, right? Yet again, DJ Moore, his comp, just next to him. That's exactly what you're seeing. Not going to shake someone open. He does, but hey, it's all about his game-breaking ability. And that's why I kind of want to see him Otherwise, I'd be fine with Duvernay out there because then I feel Zakias is more that true wide receiver 4. So if anything, I'd rather have Duvernay or Luther Burton out there. Zakias, not so much. Just from that side of it. Tyler Scott, I just felt like he's never really done anything with the special teams unless can he actually make a tackle, all 185 pounds of him, as a gunner or something like that. So now, let's break it down into the final little aspects of the show, the over-unders, and then last but not least, did we get better? So let's break down the over-unders that I kind of set up, and I just want to also remind everybody, the over-unders that I set up that you see on your screen right there on YouTube, these are for the wide receivers. This is not for the entire team. That's right. These are not for the entire team, just the wide receiver position. And let's get started. So for those that are watching on YouTube, try to throw out there, like you can comment this and you make sure you throw out what you're saying yes and no to as well. Because sometimes people just say yes, no, or over, under, but I don't necessarily know what specifically we're calling out. So let's go into 1,000 yard receivers. And I'll set the line at 1.5. So do you believe that there's going to be more than 1.5 1,000 yard receivers or less? So really what this is probably boiling down to, like not to just toss Luther Burton out of it, but it's really, do you think that Romar Morris and DJ Moore are going to get more than 1,000 yards receiving? Now, why this is a little bit interesting is because both Williams and St. Brown got over 1,000 yards receiving. Now, no offense to Williams out there. I think he's a good receiver, but I don't think he's amazing or anything like that. I think that Romar Morris can definitely put up similar numbers to that. And also too, but you also have to factor in Jared Goff has always been a yards merchant, over 4,600 yards last season. Now, when you look also too, when we were going through like the different wide receivers, both of them did not break 1,000 receiving yards. So what does everybody think? Because to me, I think it's going to be close, but I think that the safe bet is to say under. I think the season is long. I think that you're going to have a lot of targets, and also getting 1,000 yards to 2 receivers is going to be a lot. If they do, amazing. Like, I think we're going to be jumping for joy. I just feel with all the targets, with Loveland, with Komet, with Luther Burton, with Zakias, I think that ball is going to be distributed out, and I think it's going to be close. But I think that to say over, I can't. I just can't. I had it at 1.5 last season as well, but to me, I'm going to go under with it just because. I want to say over, but I'm going to say under for that. And my next one is passing touchdowns from a wide receiver set at 0.5. So do we think a wide receiver is going to pass for a touchdown? And you know what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say over on this one because we saw the drills. We saw those different pieces, and I think they're going to try and throw something out there. Maybe it's with an lineman or something, but also Zakias can throw the football. You have seen this. He can actually throw it. So I think that they're going to do something with Olamide Zakias, and then he throws the football. And also a lot of the passes that we saw to the quarterbacks in OTAs and minicamp, they're pretty. Like, they weren't bad balls by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to say over on the 0.5 passing touchdowns because why not? I think that I'm going to go a little bit higher on. And next, this one is worded weird because I had to fit it inside of this box, but I'll say it so that people on YouTube don't have to read this. For the team-led receptions, what this means is how many wide receivers do you think are going to lead the team in receptions? So what I mean by that is last year, DJ Moore led the team in receptions with 98. Then it was Keenan Allen at 2 with 70. And then Romar Morris below that with 54. And then Cole Kmet with 47. And then DeAndre Swift with 42. So I put this at 1.5. So basically saying, hey, do you think that Romar Morris or DJ Moore will be number 2 in receptions? I think this one's pretty easy. With this one, I will say yes. And now the big reason why I wanted to throw this out there was because last season, St. Brown had 115 receptions, and then Sam Laporta with 60, so he was number 2, and then Williams was number 3 with 58. But to me, I think it makes sense. I think that they're going to have more than 2 wide receivers leading the team in receptions. I don't think that Kmet or I think that like the tight end distribution, I think it's going to be well versed out there. I think Loveland and Kmet are going to be kind of splitting some of that load, and that's why I think that you're going to see Rome get a lot more catches. And also, Rome is a very reliable target, and Caleb really does seem to prefer throwing to wide receivers over a tight end. So that's how that's how I feel. I think that's going to be over. And last but not least, Pro Bowls set at 0.5. And man, I set this at 1.5 last season. Man, were we optimistic about what could happen with Keenan and DJ and how's this going to be distributed. Wide receivers are very hard to make the Pro Bowl. That's the only thing that I'm kind of holding back a little bit. Also, too, I don't necessarily think that DJ is going to have a St. Brown-esque year or Rome's going to absolutely pop off. Like I said, I think it's going to be more evenly distributed because, Ben's trying to feed it to the people that are, liking his system. And also, you have so many weapons that you can keep them guessing. While in Detroit, I felt like he didn't have as many weapons. He had a lot of bodies, but, watch, there's going to be a Detroit fan out there that's mad at this. But, you do see that where you had Laporta, you have St. Brown, you have 2 primary weapons, and then Williams, good, right? But I don't think that was about it, right? You had Gibbs at running back, but I think with this, you have more weapons in the passing game. I don't see it. It's very hard to be a wide receiver and make the Pro Bowl. And with the weapons, I'm going to say under on that because I just think it's going to be distributed. I think it's going to be a wide passing attack. And yet again, the Pro Bowls are for wide receivers, not for tight ends, not for anything like that. So if there's anyone that's like, hey, what about others? Like, no. This is just for the wide receiver position. So that's my over-unders. But like I said, let me know in the comments what you think. But now last, to wrap things up, did we get better? Now, I think when you look at the starting wide receivers, you would say no, because Keenan Allen, and whether it's Luther Burton or Olamide Zakias, Keenan Allen, even though that he was an old, rundown veteran, he was still a reliable target. He still had great hands. And that's where I'm hoping Rome becomes that for him. Because there was a lot of talk with him and Rome about needing to be in the right spot. Hopefully that communication, that chemistry can continue to build because he needs that sure-handed target like he had with the Keenan Allen. But yeah, the starting lineup, you got worse. The chances of Luther Burton being better than what Keenan Allen was last year, I think is small. But in different ways, it doesn't mean that Luther's not going to be good. It just means that he's going to have a different level of impact. While Keenan was more of the old, reliable vet, Luther Burton can be more of the playmaking wide receiver. Same thing with Zakias. But then let DJ Moore and Rome Odunze shine. Because also part of this is the natural progression. I think DJ is DJ, right? We know what we're getting. But I do think Rome is going to get better. He's going to be really well coached. And he's going to be someone that can develop with Caleb. So I think Rome's going to get better. And I think that Luther is a good player. Luther Burton's a good player. But why I think that this receiving core is better is the backups. Because we simply did not have any sort of good backups last season. Like Tyler Scott, DeAndre Carter, Velus Jones. The lack of depth, that's what was so troubling. I think we got a lot better with Zakias, with Duvernay, with Boykin, with even, now you have Tyler Scott coming back. So that's a wash. But I think with adding Zakias, adding Burton, adding Duvernay, adding Boykin, and then also a foreseeable jump from Rome Odunze, I'd say that this is slightly better than last season. Yes, we don't have the stars that we had last year with the actual unit at the very beginning, but it's much more than that. This isn't just Madden where you're grading the top 3 and you turn off injuries, you turn off fatigue, and you just say, all right, you 3 go out there. I think that this is slightly better because of Rome's progression and the overall depth of this receiving group. So that's my take. If you disagree, let me know down below in the comments. But like I said, we'll be rolling out these for all the different positions so we get into the deep depths of are we better? And then we're going to roll it together and say, hey, how much better are we across the different position groups? Is there any concerns? So you want to make sure to hit that like and subscribe out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars wherever you get your podcast. Feel free to download it on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get that. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a